So another incredible episode of The Mandalorian. I really enjoyed it. I like the whole things we got. We got a heist movie with a little bit of horror mixed in. It just made for a really good combination, a really fun episode. We got to see new alien creatures we haven't seen in a long time, so it's just a whole lot of fun. So Mandalorian Chapter 6 or Episode 6, The Prisoner, was another great episode, so it just continues to go on, and I like this a lot better than like the past couple episodes, so I really enjoyed this episode a lot. So we pick up just kind of in the middle of things, so we see the Razor Crest come landing into like a docking bay at some like space station, and Mando comes out and we get introduced to Rand, which is played by Mark Boone Jr., which I best know him as Harvey Bullock from Batman Begins, but he has hired Mando to do a mission for him, and so he has this whole group of characters that are going to go off and do this mission. But he's talking to Mando and brings up that he's heard that he's had some issues with the guild, so we know that this is spreading out, that Mando is being hunted for. But Rand explains that an associate of his ended up getting caught, so they're going to spring him out, and that the only reason they really needed Mando was for his Razor Crest, so the ship. And then we get introduced to the rest of the group that's going to be on this mission with Mando. So we get introduced to Mayfeld, which was played by Bill Burr, and it's mentioned that he is an ex-Imperial sharpshooter and that he's going to be like the leader of this group. And then we meet Burg, which was played by Clancy Brown, which was kind of unknown. His voice sounded a little familiar to me, but like visuals, I didn't think that was him at all. He's a Devaronian, so he's the guy that looks like the devil. We saw it back in A New Hope in the cantina, and they even strictly mentioned that he's the muscle of the group. And next up is Zero, which is a droid, which of course doesn't make Mando happy because he hates his droid, but we have Zero, which is actually Q90, and he has like a bug face, so again like a C-3PO style body, but then a bug-like face, and then he's going to be the pilot of the ship. And our last member is Xi'an, which was played by Natalia Tena, and she of course best known as Tonks from Harry Potter, and she is a Twi'lek, and then it's mentioned and brought up kind of that she had a former relationship with Mando. So the group starts to go over the mission, and it's brought up that their package is being held on a New Republic prison ship, which that causes Mando concern because he's like, well, you know, I thought he was, you know, captured but just by some other bounty group or something, we're just trying to save, but no, he was arrested for a reason, and so now he's in prison, and now you want to spring him out of prison. But although he's unhappy, he still goes along with it. So Zero is up in the ship, and he's examining everything, you know, making sure everything's going to run right, and he comes back saying, you know, there's a lot of stuff wrong with the ship, you know, stuff isn't working properly, or it's only partially working, and so he doesn't know why they're trying to use the ship. But Rand brings up, well, this is the Razor Crest is an older ship, and so it's off the old Imperial grid and the New Republic, so it's the best ship for them to use. And so they set off towards the prison ship, and of course Zero is driving the ship, and Mando of course is unhappy about it, but they jump into hyperspace, and Zero's like, you know, go back with the others, I can drive this. And so he catches Burg getting into all his stuff, and so he's, you know, getting into his armor and stuff, and Mando shuts it, and then he starts to go for the closet door where Mando tends to sick Yoda, and we haven't seen Yoda yet, so I assume that's where he's hiding him. And so he starts to go for that door, and Mando stops him, and then of course that causes some issues between them. And so the group starts asking Mando, you know, have you ever taken your helmet off? Let's see what you look like under there. And even Mayfeld makes a comment that, you know, he's probably a Gungan under there, and makes, you know, a little like Jar Jar voice. So Burg goes at Mando trying to take his helmet off, and so that causes a fight between them, so they start throwing each other around, and they end up hitting the button, and the door opens, and Yoda's sitting there right inside the little like bed closet. So that kind of breaks up everything, because now all the rest of the group is like looking at the Yoda like, whoa, what is this thing? Is this your pet? And Mando kind of plays it off that he is, and then Mayfeld asks, you know, did you two make this? Looking at Mando and Xi'an, since it's mentioned they had a past relationship. But Mayfeld mentions, you know, he never had a pet, but maybe he'll try this one, and he picks up Yoda and has an artist like, maybe I'll take this as a pet. And so it's starting to get real tense, like what's he going to do to Baby Yoda? But Zero ends up saving the thing because they're approaching the ship, so he starts flying it all crazy because they have to, you know, get out of the sensors or whatever of the ship, so he starts flying it all crazy, and that causes all of them to go flying around the ship, but also unfortunately causes Yoda to go flying out of Mayfeld's hand, and he just like slams onto the ground, and even kind of starts to make like little crying noises, but Mando ends up getting him back up, and he's just fine. So they've docked on the prison base, so they're getting ready to go, and so Mando takes Yoda, puts him back in the little closet, and shuts the door. And so they start to go to the prison ship, so Mando has to like crack the door open with this little device, so he gets it open, and so they all start going into the ship with Zero guiding them around. So he has a whole like schematic of the ship, and so he can see their little dots and stuff, and so he's guiding them around to get to the control room. So they're sneaking around the ship, and there's robots everywhere because they're the one like guards of the ship, and so they're sneaking around trying to, you know, not get detected, and they're seeing the various prisoners. And so we see an Ardenian, which was like a Rio Durant from Solo, which is kind of funny because he was voiced by Jon Favreau, and then Jon Favreau's, you know, in charge of The Mandalorian. We see what looks to be like an Imperial officer, and then there's some big guy that they focus on, but I've never seen him before, but he looked kind of like Sloth from the Goonies to me and my brother. But they're sneaking around, and they come across a mouse droid, and of course that upsets Burg, and so he ends up shooting that, and then that causes security droids to come after him. So they're having like this shootout in a hallway, and the security droids are pinning down the group in the hallway, and they're not getting very far, and Mando all of a sudden is just disappeared, and they're like, of course he would leave us, but then all of a sudden he appears behind the security droids, and he comes up behind him and starts attacking. He pulls out his vibro blade and he's then able to cut off the leg of one. So we can tell this vibro blade is really strong and like has a lot of good qualities because it can cut through metal that their blasters can't even damage. He uses his flamethrower some and then uses like his little grapple wire. I don't know what it's called, but it's just like his wire that he shoots out and can grapple and stuff, and he's pulling them down. But he eventually ends up taking out all the droids while the rest of the group just stands there and watches. So they make their way into the control room and they find a rebel trooper inside, which of course they're like, there wasn't supposed to be any humans on the ship, but we see the rebel troopers played by Matt Lanter, which did the voice of Anakin in all the Clone Wars series. So they hold him at gunpoint and then he reveals that he has a tracker. That's a call to their New Republic. So they all start freaking out saying, we can't get the New Republic on us. And of course Mando's trying to defuse the thing. He's like, we don't need to kill him. The rest of them are like, we'll just kill him. But he's like, no, don't kill him. And so they all start pointing guns at each other. They should point at Mando. He points at them and the rebel trooper. So they're all just holding each other up until Xi'an ends up just throwing a knife and killing the rebel trooper. And she's like, there, I took care of it. But then they find out that the button was actually pushed. And so it's now the tracker's going off. And Zero comes over the comm saying that their signal is going out and they have 20 minutes until the New Republic shows up. So that caused them to go running through the ship trying to find their target. And they end up finding the cell and opening it up. And we see Quinn, which is Xi'an's brother. And so another Twi'lek, but obviously the male version. So he has the big bumps on his head stuff. Very ugly looking face. And of course, since Xi'an had a past with Mando, so did a brother. And Quinn's like, oh gee, the guy that abandoned me is now saving me. And that causes Burg to punch Mando in the back, sends him flying into the prison cell, and they shut the door and trap Mando in the prison. So the rest of the group goes running off through the ship, trying to get back to the Razor Crest, and Mando's, stuck inside the cell trying to figure out how to get out. But eventually a security droid goes walking by and Mando shoots out his grapple and pulls the droid to the door, and the droid's, trying to get free, and so he's sticking his arm in through like one of the slots in the jail cell. Mando ends up grabbing his arm and pulling his arm off and then using the blaster to kill the droid, and then he uses the droid arm to his little like device, like R2 little probe device, and ends up opening the door. So Mando is now free and he makes his way back to the control room and he starts a lockdown on the prison ship, so all sorts of doors start shutting down, which even causes a split between the groups. So we have Xi'an and Burg together and Quinn and Mayfeld. But also at this point we go back to the Razor Crest with Zero and we hear Yoda make noise behind him, and he turns around and right at like the entrance into the cockpit, Yoda's just standing there and they're just kind of staring at each other, and Zero eventually ends up turning around, grabs a gun and turns back, and Yoda is gone. So now we have the hunt for Yoda. Back in the prison ship, Mando ends up picking up the rebel tracker device and he stares at it, so that's going to come back into play at some point. And back to the Razor Crest, we see Yoda hiding behind a bunch of boxes back towards the back of the ship, and Zero's searching through the ship trying to find him. And back in the prison ship, Burg ends up making his way to the control room and he starts walking in and he knows Mando's around somewhere, and we see that Mando's hiding up in the ceiling, and he shoots his grapple down around Burg's neck and they start fighting with each other, and Burg just like completely destroying him, smashing him into everything. Mando keeps trying to shoot off his guns. His whistling birds go off at one point, of course, but none of them hit Burg, and he uses his flamethrower as well, but we see the flame has no effect on Burg because of his species. But we see Mando eventually flip Burg out into like the entranceway, and Mando shoots the device and it shuts the door on him, and so we think, oh, he's got rid of him, he killed him again like he did in the first episode with use of a door. But then we see the door start to come back up and Burg is pushing the door up because he's a big strong guy. But then Mando shoots another control panel and another door shuts, but this time it's like a blast door and it shuts, and it looks like it shuts right on Burg's face. So we assume he's taken care of now. So then we get a confrontation between Xi'an and Mando in a hallway, and of course Xi'an has all these little like throwing knives that she's throwing at him, but he's deflecting them, and the one guy I think even like stabs him or something, but he gets up to her and ends up getting it, and it looks like he stabs her. And next up is Mayfeld, and so he's in an area where there's like strobe lights going off. So this is the whole horror movie segment, so it's like a very classic horror movie where there's a flashing light, and so as the light's flashing you can see Mando in the background like moving closer and closer to Mayfeld, and right when Mando would be right behind him, he turns around and no Mando there at all, but then he turns back around and Mando's in front of him and takes him out. Back in the Razor Crest, we hear the door shut on the little closet area, so we know Yoda made his way back into the closet, so hopefully he'll be protected in there. Finally, we see Quinn starting to climb up the ladder to get into the Razor Crest, and Mando approaches him, so they confront each other, and Quinn's like, do you get rid of the other people? And Mando says, I did what I had to do. So Quinn's like, you know what, just take me in. So he turns himself over, he's just trying to spare his life. He's like, take me in, I'll guarantee you get your money and stuff, just don't kill me. And back in the Razor Crest, we see Zero opening the door and opens it, and there's Baby Yoda just sitting right there on the bed. They're just kind of staring at each other. Zero picks the gun up, points it right at Yoda, and so Yoda raises his little hand again like he's going to use the Force, so he's got his little hand up pointing at Zero, and all of a sudden Zero just explodes, and Baby Yoda like looks at his hands like, whoa, I have like a lot of powers. But as Zero falls, we see Mando standing right behind him, so of course he arrived just in time to save Baby Yoda as we expected. And that leads us back to the space station where Mando drops Quinn off for payment. Of course Rand's like, what happened to all the others? And Mando's like, no question, asked. Remember, that's our code. And Rand's like, you're right, you know, no questions asked. He pays him. And so Mando takes off in the Razor Crest. And as soon as Mando's out of the docking bay, Rand hits a button saying, kill him. And we start to see a ship come out of the floor. And it looks kind of like General Grievous' ship that Obi-Wan used to escape Utapau. And so it's rising out of the floor. So we assume that's going to go after him and try to take out the Razor Crest. But then we hear a beeping sound and Quinn reaches in his pocket and pulls out the tracker. So he has the tracker on him. So the New Republic's going to be coming for him. And so we see Mando flying off and we see 3 X-Wings all of a sudden appear around him. And so they fly by him and start going towards the little space station. And they're like, they're launching a gunship. And so they start shooting in the docking bay and destroy that ship and then just start firing on the space station. So that allows Mando and the Razor Crest to shoot off into hyperspace. And we see Yoda sitting in the seat behind him again. So Mando takes the little ball off the lever, hands that to Yoda again, and they take off. But before we leave, we go back to the prison ship. We're inside of a cell. We see Xi'an, Mayfeld, and Burg all sitting there. And Burg has his horns broken off of his head. So we see that Mando didn't actually kill them. He just took them out and he threw them into a prison cell. And they're in the prison now. And that was the end of our episode. So once again, a very fun episode. I like the whole heist thing of sneaking through the prison ship and getting to meet all these new characters of this group. I thought from the trailer this group was going to be like a part of Mando's crew, like they were going to eventually get a crew to, you know, help fight somebody probably towards the end of the season. So I thought this was all going to be like a part of his group. But as we found out, none of them would probably end up joining him since they all turned against each other and stuff. And so none of them are friends now. But as you probably noticed in this episode, there wasn't as much Baby Yoda, which is fine with me. I mean, we still got enough of him and he was super cute, so had no issues there. But yeah, there just wasn't as much as there has been, so that was a little unfortunate. But still, another great episode. Again, the visuals looked great. All the, of course, droids were really cool. We got to see all sorts of different droids. Of course, there on the prison ship, we got to see an R1 astromech droid with floating around, which was cool, which Burg ended up taking out at one point with his bare hands, which was cool. So a lot more cool stuff is just being shown in the show, which makes me love it even more. And again, I like this episode a lot more than the past ones. So that brings us to a rating. So I was thinking about the rating once again, and so I'd probably have to give this an 8 because I really did enjoy this episode. I really liked what went on. I liked the whole rogue crew they had, and again, the whole prison heist, and even like the little horror movie aspect I really enjoyed. So it was just a really fun episode in my opinion. I really enjoyed it, so I'm going to give it an 8. So let me know your opinions down in the comments down below. If you agree with me or not, go ahead and let me know in the comments. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and of course subscribe to our channel to see all our reviews, especially coming up for Rise of Skywalker and then the last 2 episodes of Mandalorian. You can check those out. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.